Back in the mid 90s, it was all about anime, video games, and playing Magic the Gathering for me. My life consisted of pretty much nothing else. And yeah, I was a really big anime fan. I loved the franchise Tenchi Muyo. I still have quite a bit of my collectibles from way back then. Even got this nice little McFarlane Toys figure. But this was way back when anime, you had to wait for VHS tapes to come out, and they came with like 2 episodes each. And I loved it, man. I really did. But we didn't really get too much in the way of anime video games. So that's why when I saw this cartridge with these 4 English translated anime role-playing games, I was intrigued. I was like, you know what? I love Tenshi Muyo. There's no denying that. Ranma's pretty awesome. Slayers as well. Those 3 I watched quite a bit back in the day. Magic Knight Rayearth, I was never really exposed too much to that. But these 3 other games, it piqued my interest. I had to get this cartridge. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at this today. But this cart is very, very high quality, very hefty. All 4 of these games are English translated. So that's great. They are role-playing games. So, I mean, it would have been really awesome because that was like one of the biggest things I was into back in the day was role-playing games. I would have loved to be able to play these back in the 90s when they were, a little more relevant, I guess. But you know what? Hey, now's better than never, right? So I'm going to take a look at this. But I think one of the things we should do is open this cartridge up and take a look at the insides, because this is definitely not one of those cheap Chinese repros. There's some heft to this thing. Here we go. Let's get our game bit out. Open it up. We'll pop it in, take a look at a little bit of gameplay in a second. But just really curious to see what the board looks like. So, I know a lot of people aren't into the repro stuff, but, we cover a little bit of everything. I get it. If it's not for you, that's okay. For me, I'm fine with it. I mean, it's not a big deal, man. I do have a lot of repro carts for the Super Nintendo, no other system. And typically when I do get repro carts, I make sure, no matter what the game is, I don't get the same color shell. Like, I always make sure if there's an option, I'm getting a cartridge that's a different color than an original Super Nintendo cart. So let's open this up. I do, like I said, I have quite a bit of Super Nintendo repros. Look at this thing. Battery backup there for our internal saves, because obviously role-playing games, we're going to be having some saves. And yep, this is from retrocircuits.com. I've bought quite a bit of games from these guys, and I know a few of you guys out there who watch my channel have as well. Really like the quality of the boards they use. Everything's like proper voltage and all that. Not going to blow up your Super Nintendo, but there is that. Pretty darn sweet. Very, very nice. Whenever you get the repros, the Banggood or AliExpress or GearBest, any of those guys, man, the board is like, it goes like 3 millimeters above the connector here. It's like, how the hell did they get the game on there? But I don't mess with those. I like to, get the decent quality ones, such as this. Yeah, it's a pink shell. Who cares? I think it's pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and pop this in. Take a little look at some gameplay here. Really excited, definitely, to check out Tenchi, Slayers, and Ranma. I'll still check out Magic Knight Rayearth, but really more excited about the other 3. So let's go ahead and pop it in and check it out. So here we go. When you first boot up the cartridge, custom cartridge made by Retro Circuits. Nice little screenshot there of what's included. Then you scroll left or right to select your game. So let's take a look at Tenchi Muyo. Since that's out of this set, it is my favorite anime out of these, particular ones. Band Presto game. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was necessarily about this show or series of shows that was really appealing to me at the time. I've tried rewatching Tenchi, and yeah, I still have that nostalgia for it, but it doesn't really vibe with me too much anymore. I think maybe because I was younger, had that kind of Star Wars type story to it in a sense, had a lot of sci-fi and fantasy things going on for it, and it was a young dude surrounded by a bunch of chicks. So I mean, what more could you want, really? I don't know. It was definitely a pretty cool show. Had a little humor going on with it. I really dug it. So going into this game, yeah, I probably would have really enjoyed this if I had it when it first released back in, I believe this came out around 95. But going through these games and playing some of these on this, multi-cart collection, man, it's really cool and neat to see these things. But I don't feel most of these games on this collection have aged very well. Looking at Tenchi, this game, out of all four of them, I've already kind of gone through all four games. This game definitely, I think, has the better graphics, the better animation going for it. Not necessarily saying this is the better game, but as far as how it looks, definitely has a lot better style, and just the graphics kind of pop more than the other games. You'll see what I'm saying in a moment. But with a lot of these old school role-playing games, holy crap, man, have we come far from these kind of battle systems in these games. This one in particular is fairly neat and interesting from what I've played so far, but it is sluggish. It's very time-consuming to get a match going on, to get a fight going on. It does have that strategy element where you actually move your characters. You place what characters you're going to use in the battle where you want them, and then you can move them when it's your turn and then, select an action. It's fairly neat, but definitely a little outdated for, current time anyway. Okay, so that was Tenchi. Little slow. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get into that game. Maybe if it was back in the 90s, I would have. But let's go ahead and take a look at Slayers here. Another anime that I watched quite a bit of back when I was younger. This game, man, when I first booted this up and I was taking a look, I was like, wow, what are these graphics here, man? These are kind of like brighter NES style. There's not much in the way of detail with the characters. They're kind of tiny looking. Not a lot of detail going on here, but from what I've played so far, it still retains the humor from the show, has a lot going for it. This dude just dragging her off. Thought that was pretty funny. But once you get into it, it plays a lot like Dragon Quest, which I found interesting. One of the first role-playing games that I played back in the day was Dragon Warrior for the NES, and that definitely got me hooked. And I know most of those games still play fairly similar to the old school games. And playing this, yeah, I could harp on the graphics a little bit, for the lack of detail and all that good stuff. But really, the humor and the gameplay kind of makes it up for me. So far, I actually have spent more time playing this than the Tenchi game, and actually enjoyed this quite a bit more so because of the dialogue and the humor behind it. Even to this day, I like humor. I like things that are hilarious. Like, I'm not too deep into stuff that's serious. Occasionally, yeah, I'll watch some TV shows or movies that have a more serious tone to it. But even with anime, it was more of a thing where even, the more recent stuff that I probably watched that wasn't from the 90s, like Full Metal Panic, Fumofu, Those Who Hunt Elves, which might have been from the 90s. I'm not 100% on that one. But stuff like that, where it was just stupid funny. Those are the kind of things like Azumanga Daioh. Always enjoyed humor in my shows, and a lot of times in games and movies as well. So this one so far, I have really dug quite a bit. So next up, let's take a look at Ranma. So this was an anime that It started out in the late 80s, I believe in 89. I was not exposed to this for a long while after that, somewhere in the mid 90s or so. And this is one of those animes that has tons of episodes, well over 100. I've never seen them all. It was one that I don't know, maybe the premise kind of initially put me off, where I was like, why would I want to watch this? You know, this dude gets splashed with water and he turns to a girl. You know, his dad turns to a panda. Like, what the hell is this? You know, what is this premise? But when I actually started watching it, I was like, you know, this is pretty damn funny. A lot of, you know, martial arts, action stuff, and just humor. And that's kind of stuff that I like. So when I finally did give it a chance, I really dug it. It's a shame that, you know, I gave it a chance such, you know, later on. Kind of wish I would have been able to watch every episode, that kind of thing. I know there were some movies and whatnot. Maybe one day I will. But so far, playing this role-playing game, it's fairly neat. So far, out of the 3 games that I've checked out, this one is going to be my least favorite. You know, the graphics aren't too bad. The humor, the dialogue is pretty good. The fighting sequences are a little lackluster for me. You know, it's interesting, but yeah, so far it's not my favorite out of this collection. It's just one that really isn't catching me for some reason. Nothing necessarily bad with it. I think it's just the slower pace. I mean, it's a role-playing game. It's kind of hard to complain about pacing, you know, with these older games from, you know, the 90s. But yeah, this game just feels a little more sluggish and slower to get going for me. I lose my patience quick. I'm not gonna lie. It's just the way it is. So here we go, Magic Knight Rayearth, the final game on this collection, and the one anime I'm not familiar with whatsoever. I remember seeing the cover, maybe to the VHS, DVDs, that kind of thing, back in the day in stores, and just, it didn't appeal to me for whatever reason. Maybe the art style, I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's a bad show or anything. I know there's a lot of people who dug this anime, but for me, it was just one I never got into. But playing this game, and actually, you know, playing all 4 games on this cartridge, it's really neat to see these games that we never got in the States. I was a big Squaresoft fan back then on the Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1, all that good stuff. And I look at these games and the way they play, the art style, how, you know, there's not much detail in most of these games. Tenchi Muyo, I think, had the more detail with the character art anyway, the sprites for the characters, than the rest of these games. Sure, these games might have some dialogue box portraits that look pretty good, you know, and some emotion with that looks really neat. And I'm not knocking the graphics on these games, but it really just doesn't seem to be on par with what Square was doing with games like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 3 or 6, whatever the heck you want to call it, or even, you know, like Secret of Mana, those kind of games. Not to say these games are not good, it's just ones that maybe my impression of them would be a little different if they released on the Super Nintendo back then in the States. Maybe my impression would be a little different. You know, these are decent games. These are cool little games. I don't know if, you know, with this time in my life, if I have enough time to sit down and play through all of these games. So far, I mean, the one that I'm more interested in is Slayers. And that one had like the least appealing graphics to me, but it was just the humor and how the game played that kind of grabbed me a little bit. So it's not always about the graphics, it's about the story, the dialogue, how everything flows. And I felt that game kind of grabbed me a little more than the rest of the games on this cartridge. But I just wanted to share this with you guys today. Thought it was pretty neat. Really dig taking a look at stuff that I've never messed with before, you know, especially games like this, these English translated role-playing games that we never got. Thought it was pretty cool. If you want to check out Retro Circuits, I'll put a link in the description. You know, I know some people like ordering from them, some people don't. I think they put out a quality product. I did check to see if this was on their website, and I couldn't find it. I remember, because I've had this cart for a little while now. I remember I saw it like advertised on their Facebook page or something. I had to put in a special request for it, and that's when they got it to me. So with them, it's always something where if they don't have it, you can ask and they can make the cart. So if you want to check it out, there you go. But hey, really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me today with this little, a little different than what we normally do, but pretty interesting nonetheless, in my opinion. So hey, I do appreciate it. And with that said, I will catch you guys next time. Peace out, bye-bye, and boom. Bye.